So we'll call this one critical thinking, or maybe like, what's going on here? Are you buying this? So as you can see here, we've gone from winter straight into summer here in Finland. But I've not come here to talk about that. To say, what I have come to talk about is, well, a few issues, starting off with critical thinking. So when I was a teacher, I was looking through, you get these, I used to get quite a lot of, not boasting here, but it's just a fact, I used to get quite a few presents from students at the end of the year, you know, bottles of stuff and cards, and I always like to keep the cards. And anyway, the other day I was like, had to dig some stuff out, and some of these cards that I'd put in one of those envelope files fell out on the floor, so I kind of picked them up and started reading them. And one of the things that that students said over and over again about me was that they thanked me for encouraging them to think critically, which is very nice. Now, one thing that I've noticed about being labelled as a critical thinker, remember, self-praise is no praise, is that I can say that it doesn't, being a critical thinker isn't always the best way of being popular with people, because when you think critically, you often will go against the grain, the prevailing consensus, and there'll always be people who don't like you doing that. They don't like you questioning things. So being a critical thinker requires some courage, and you know, you've also got to accept the fact that people are not going to like what you have to say. Most people won't do. They'll hurl abuse at you and stuff, or just stay away from you because they don't want to be exposed to your line of questioning that might make them feel uncomfortable. So, and this is going to be true in this video too. There's going to be I may well attract some flack for what's about to come, because it's going to this video is going to be about critical thinking, using a specific example. So the other day, you know, you've got your YouTube feed and all of that, and YouTube pops up recommendations, doesn't it? The algorithm does. And turn around because it's quite sunny today. And basically this Paul Thorpe guy, he keeps on popping up in my YouTube feed, even though I don't subscribe to the bloke, which I think is quite interesting. And he's, well, I won't say any more about him yet, but he's just, the algo pushes him massively. Could be just because he makes good videos and people watch for a long time, don't know. Anyway, he's produced a number of videos whereby, you know, he's going to and from Spain all the time, and he talks about how he's being detained at I don't know, Heathrow or Gatwick or whatever by the police. And the other day he's kind of allegedly, this is all you know, let's call it errorism, yeah, spelt with a T. And he's got a mate too who he goes out to Spain with and whatever. And the other day, he recounted this story. It was, I maybe give a link to it in the video description. And same sort of thing happened. And, you know, fingerprints and swabs and all the rest of it. And he also said that he was going to go and visit the football hooligan from Luton. And anyway, the gist of it all was, oh, they're going to stop making comments about the situation, the political situation in the UK. You know, they sort of made reference to the fact that somebody had alluded to them going in too deep, getting involved in things that maybe they shouldn't get involved in. They're out of their depth. That was the phrase that was used. So far, all I've done there is just recounted some indisputable facts, What I'm going to do now is kind of analyze it using some logic. And then at the end of the video, you can make your own mind up about things. That's what critical thinking is about, you making your own mind up. But let's start off with some logic first, some basic principles, yeah? And the first one is that when people do something, they do something with a goal in mind. And people's actions are orientated towards achieving their objectives. Those of you who are on my channel will have heard me talk about that many times before. But to be a critical thinker, you need to appreciate that. I think it's impossible to think critically unless you're willing to accept that human action is purposeful behaviour. So the big club don't want you to... The big club don't want you to believe that. What they want you to believe is that, oh, people are irrational and they do things on a whim and it's all random, and whereas nothing could be further from the truth. So if you want to understand the situation, you need to understand the people involved, what are their goals, and then once you've worked that out, you can then start to make some sense of their actions. So let's talk about the big club. Obviously their overall objective is depop and control, we know that. I think they also know that round about 30%, maybe more, of people are beginning to become alive to this. You know, they're waking up, they're understanding that that the politicians are pursuing a different agenda to the one that they're publicly proclaiming. And what people like me are trying to do is to spread those ideas, to try to get more people to realise what the agenda is. So my first question is, does the big club want people like me and you maybe to start talking to other people and trying to raise their awareness of what's going on? Do they want that to happen? Or do they want to discourage that from happening? My answer is I think they want to discourage it, and you could see that was partially what was going on with the lockups, yeah, during the People's Pantomime, that they closed places like pubs and other places where people could get together and talk about what was happening. So do they want to censor us? Well, of course they do. Of course they want to censor us. But the problem is that censorship is expensive in terms of resources. You know, if you think about former Eastern Germany, you know, I don't know what percentage of it's some crazy percentage of the population actually ended up working for the secret police. And it's just, you know, it's much easier to get people to self-censor. So what's that? Well, it's basically a situation where people are reluctant to talk because they're worried about something bad happening to them. So they like self-censorship because it doesn't require resources, and all you need to do to engender self-censorship is just create fear, right? And how you can create fear is by pulling off some stunts, yeah? So you can basically get some actors. Do you remember during the pantomime, I reckon a lot of these things, you know, with the slave muzzle rather, you know, police roughing people up, I think a lot of those things were staged. It was actors, police, you know, and it was all designed to encourage people to comply out of fear. And the same sort of thing has been happening with you know, with many of these arrests. I feel that many of these arrests have been staged by the big club with the sole purpose of trying to create fear. Sometimes though, you might want to lock up some real dissidents and you know, create some examples of people that can also create fear, and from that fear, self-censorship, which is what they want. They don't want us talking about what they're doing. They don't want us trying to tell other people about what the agenda is, for obvious reasons. The problem with this second tactic though is that if you really do go around persecuting people, locking people up like real people rather than big club actors, then one problem that you might have is finding police who will do it. You know, I don't know, yeah, maybe 70% will go along with it and follow orders, but maybe even just 30% of honest officers might say, well, I'm not prepared to do that. Whereas if it's staged with some police actors and some kind of other big club actors who are playing the part of the general public, then you don't have to worry about that agenda, because it's all fake, right? You're not actually requiring anybody who isn't fake to play a part in your kabuki theatre. So going back to this guy Paul Thorpe, am I saying that he's a big club actor? Is he a fabrication? No, I'm not saying that. I don't have enough evidence to say that. But what's important is, regardless of whether he is or isn't an actor, the outcome is the same, is that his videos are actually creating fear. So he's saying, and his mate is saying, oh, we're going to stop producing these YouTube videos, we're going to stop speaking out. Now, he's got a massive audience, and what that's going to do is it's going to encourage other people to do the same, to also not talk to their friends and colleagues around the water cooler or down the pub about what's going on, or to express opinions about how their taxes are being spent. So whether he is or he isn't a big club actor, the end result is the same, you know, in that it's very useful for the big club, because he's actually, by making his own stance extremely public, he's encouraged. In all probability, what are people going to do? They're going to do the same, aren't they? They're also going to think twice. They're going to say, oh, well, look what happened to Paul Thorpe and Paul Thorpe's friend, so we better stay quiet too. And you know, do you see where I'm going with this? This is about critical thinking. You know, the first approach is just to sort of see this at face value and say, oh yeah, poor old Paul Thorpe. I don't know whether this bloke is you know, when they do hire actors, the thing about the big club, often they're like private schoolers, so they don't do a great job of portraying working class people very well. You know, all you have to do is just think about like EastEnders or something, you know. It's all very cliched. So you can look at Paul Thorpe yourself and think, you know, it's up to you. You make your own mind up about it. But what I'm not saying is that he's 100% a big club actor. He may be, he might not be. I don't know. But what he's saying is very, very useful to the big club, which is, I'm going to shut my mouth up because, you know, it's in my interest to do so. And I hope that he doesn't influence people. I hope people don't do what he does, which is to shut up. So some conclusions. Number one is that they don't want us to talk to each other. They don't want us, awake people, talking to normies. They do not want that at all, because they're worried that they'll get a critical mass of people who are awake, and then it's bye-bye CBDC, social credit systems and all the rest of it. So they want us they have a very strong incentive to try to get us to shut up. Second point is, there's two ways of getting somebody to shut up. You can either explicitly censor people, and the problem with that is that it's resource heavy. It needs a lot of time and manpower to do it. Second way of getting people to shut up is through self-censorship, and this is one of the big club's major tactics. Third point, how do you get people to self-censor? Answer, create fear. You need to create fear. Point 4, how do you create fear? There's two ways. You can actually go around making examples of people, but that's quite risky because it requires low-level enablers, and even just a handful of people who are brave enough to speak out could kibosh the whole thing. So it's pretty risky to do that. The other way of creating self-censorship is by turning it into a kabuki theatre. It's where you basically have two sets of actors and they play out a scene that's designed to create fear. Now, in the case of this Paul Thorpe, I don't know which of those ways of fear is being created, but one thing for certain is that those videos will be creating fear and they will be creating self-censorship, and personally I don't like that. That's a matter of great regret for me. So one last time for the Dumbos, I'm not saying that Paul Thorpe, or whatever his name is controlled or whatever, don't know. But what I am saying is that his videos will definitely encourage other people to self-censor. So in that sense, it doesn't really matter whether Paul Thorpe is real or not. So that's all I want to say today, so God bless.